Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our hybrid event. So I'm Helen Payne, Chief Executive of the Royal Society of Chemistry, and thank you so much for joining us today for the very important launch of the report Missing Elements, Racial and Ethnic Inequalities in the Chemical Sciences. Now, we're here today because we believe that chemistry should be for everyone. It's not only a matter of basic fairness, it is essential if our discipline is to benefit from the fullest possible range of talented people. The chemical sciences are at the heart of solutions to some of the world's greatest challenges: sustainable food, water and energy, preventing and curing diseases, and building a better and, more importantly, more equal global society. But unfortunately, racism, discrimination, and ethnic inequalities are a reality in the chemical sciences, just as they are in our wider society. And these prevent people from minoritised ethnicities from fulfilling their true potential in chemistry. And so chemistry itself cannot achieve its full potential. Now, we have acknowledged some of these issues in the past, but we have not confronted them head on. We had not explicitly called out racism in science for what it is, and we had not challenged our community and ourselves to properly address our own biases, and those sadly built into the structures of science and society. But I'm happy to say that's changing. In 2020, we decided it was time to step up and begin to take a more proactive stance. And today we are launching an important new report, the results of our research into race and ethnicity inequalities in the chemical sciences. Now, this brings together data and lived experience to present a rich and frankly disheartening picture of the status quo. But it also gives us direction, a solid footing on which we can make evidence-based decisions about how to spend our resources to make a real difference, making chemistry more inclusive of everybody. And we're committing to investing time, money, and the fervent belief in doing what we can to eradicate racial and ethnic inequalities from the chemical sciences. Now, actions we are taking because this research include a new race and ethnicity unit, building relationships with expert partners, and significantly increasing the amount we spend on funding streams and programs designed to drive long-term and systemic change. We will also be openly sharing everything we learn in the hope that other organisations can use those learnings in their own communities so that we can all move forward together. And that is a really important part. Sharing the outputs from our research and our report are very important to inform other people's actions, as we must all at this point take action. So to name one example, our partnership with the Windsor Fellowship to create Destination STEM Chemical Sciences, a mentoring programme for Year 12 students from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds, funded by the Chemists Community Fund. And I had the great pleasure of speaking with the first cohort of Destination STEM mentees only yesterday. And they really are the future of chemistry. And so I'm so confident that the future is in good hands. And we'll hear more about this fantastic scheme from Coutinho, Chair of Trustees at the Windsor Fellowship, shortly. We're also very grateful to those who took part in the research for sharing their perspectives so openly. The invaluable contributions to the chemical sciences of Black chemists and those from minoritised ethnicities have so often been overlooked. We celebrate them today and from now on. So in recent years, we've highlighted the challenges that women in our profession face, introduced interventions and called upon others to act. And we are now seeing some signs of improvement towards gender equality. And we want this report to be a similar rallying cry for action from the whole chemical science community. Our message is clear. We need to talk about and together address racism, discrimination, and inequality in the chemical sciences. And we need to collectively continue listening and learning. And of course, we also need to act, and act now. So today we take action and we commit to change. And I hope everyone here will join us, playing your own role in eradicating racial and ethnic inequalities from science and making our belief a reality that chemistry should be for everyone. So throughout our research for this report, we've been very lucky and benefit from the expertise and dedication of many colleagues and friends within and beyond the chemical sciences. So I have some of those people with me today. So I am joined today on a panel, and you shall see all of us sitting side by side. So I'm just going to introduce each member of the panel, and you'll hear from each of them shortly. So first of all, I'm going to introduce Professor Robert Mokaya. Robert is Professor of Materials Chemistry and Pro-Vice Chancellor for Global Engagement at the University of Nottingham and a trustee of the Royal Society of Chemistry. So welcome, Robert. I'm also going to introduce Professor Marina Resmini. Marina is Professor of Material Chemistry and Head of Chemistry Department at Queen Mary's University. She is also Chair of the Royal Society of Chemistry's Inclusion and Diversity Committee and also an RSC trustee. So welcome, Marina. And also I'm going to introduce Professor Ijeoma Uchegbu. Ijeoma is the Professor at UCL School of Pharmacy, where she also holds the positions of Provost for Africa and the Middle East and Provost Envoy for Race Equality. And she is the Chief Scientific Officer for Nanomerics, a UCL spin-out company. So I think all of that keeps you very busy. And also to introduce Kevin Coutinho. Kevin is Chair of Trustees for the Windsor Fellowship and a member of the RSC Inclusion and Diversity Committee. He's also Chair of the Higher Education Race Action Group and the UCL Gender Equality Policy Manager. And joining us by Zoom, as I can see in front of me, we have Professor Jill Reid. Jill is Professor of Organic Chemistry at Southampton University and President-elect of the Royal Society of Chemistry. And Jill will become our president in the summer. So welcome very much to all of our panel members today. And as I say, you will hear from each of them when we go through the report, but also share with you the really important actions that come from the report itself. So first I'm going to come to Robert. Robert's going to tell us more about the report. And just before you begin, Robert, I just want to say that the report could not have happened without you, without your generous contribution of knowledge, time and passion and all the energy that you have shared with us that has gone into it. So Robert, I'm going to hand over to you to talk through the report.
Thank you very much, Helen, and for so eloquently setting the context for this very important report. So the report that we are launching today does not in any way shy away from the discomfort of the realities experienced by those who are Black or ethnic minority in chemistry. And really the hope, and I personally do hope that presented with the data and evidence, that there will be no more excuses from within the community for anyone to not address the racial and ethnic inequalities that exist in chemistry. Now, by looking at the Higher Education Statistics Agency data for 2019-2020, we have been able to obtain the ethnicity breakdown of students and staff in chemistry at UK universities. And this is an indicator of progression through the academic pipeline, as you can see on the screen. For comparison and for context, we have the dashed line that shows the ethnic percentages in the UK population. So the data clearly shows that there is a retention problem, which is particularly pronounced for Black chemists. So we are certainly losing Black chemists from undergraduate level at what one might describe as an alarming rate. So if you look at the undergraduate level, 4.9% of students identify as Black, which is higher than the 3% in the UK population who identify as Black. However, this drops quite sharply from undergraduate studies to just 1.4% for postgraduate chemistry students. And then it goes further down to 1% for non-professorial academic chemistry staff. And according to the data, down to nil, 0% for chemistry professors identifying as Black. We have also looked beyond just the academic pipeline and looked at the RSC membership, which of course is comprised of a much wider range of scientists and actually has a global outlook, and also includes a diverse range of sectors and disciplines. This is actually complementary to the HISA data shown, and it extends beyond academia and of course beyond the UK. But by looking at that data, it is also clear, as we have found, that we are losing Black people, which actually suggests that we are losing Black chemists from across all sectors of the chemical sciences. We have also looked at where Black students will study, and we have categorized this as either post-92 or which are non-Russell Group universities. And we're also very much aware that while those who are in post-92 and non-Russell Group universities may face additional barriers for progression, and which may be something that is quite general and applies to other sectors, those who are in Russell Group universities will themselves struggle with underrepresentation in their field. So at the moment, we are continuing to investigate the connections between race and ethnicity and institution type, and the influence this has on Black and minority ethnic individuals in terms of how they pursue their careers in chemistry. And so this is part of ongoing research that we hope will surface trends that we can seek to address. Now, in order to understand the loss of Black students or Black chemists, we've also looked at intersectionality. And so we've looked at the intersectionality between gender with race and ethnicity. And this actually, as you can see on the screen, shows gender breakdown according to white, Asian, and Black chemistry students and staff at UK universities. So you can then see the gender distribution at the undergraduate and PhD level. It's quite similar, though there are significant differences by race. So for white students, there is a male majority at the student levels. For Asian students, the gender distribution is more even at both levels. For Black students, there is indeed a female majority at undergraduate level. Now, unsurprisingly, from our work a few years ago on women's progression in the chemical sciences through the Breaking the Barriers report, we see that the progression beyond postgraduate studies to non-professorial staff and further to professors shows a huge loss of all female chemists, regardless of race or ethnicity. So this is quite general. However, this trend is much more marked, much more pronounced for Black women, who only account for 16.7% of Black non-professorial staff in chemistry departments. Now, given that according to the HISA data, the anonymization method, the number of Black chemistry professors is actually rounded down to 0. Accordingly, there is no gender distribution according to this demographic, and you will see from the screen that there is one circle that is actually missing. And actually, if I'm allowed to just pause here and reflect on the fact that I do exist. I am a Black professor of chemistry, although the data actually says that it is 0. So if we move on to the next slide. So there is the data. The data is quite clear. The data is quite stark, but we've actually gone beyond the data and we've tried to understand from the lived experiences of those that we spoke to when we were doing this research, to understand some of the interacting themes that actually come out and where some of the barriers might be. And this might actually be the areas where we might want to concentrate in terms of our efforts. And so we've come up with a number that I'm just going to go through. So the first one is the issue of attraction, inspiration, and progression. And this speaks to the lack of relatable role models, limited careers guidance and support, and the impact of what family values and cultural influences, and perhaps short-term approaches to outreach. And I think this is quite an important one, because often students will aspire to be what they see in terms of the senior members within their own community. And so you want to imagine that if a student goes through university and does not see a person who looks like them amongst the staff, that can actually seem to be a blocker for them. The next one, if we go, the next one is mentorship, sponsorship, and networks. This includes limited access to advice and opportunities, the impact of a very sort of homogeneous way of thinking, which is the tendency for people to form connections with people similar to themselves, therefore excluding those who are different, and the need for a more consistent institution-wide approach to support, particularly to those who need the support the most. And then, of course, we have to be honest about the culture of chemistry. Perhaps many of those who are actually with us today are chemists. But this is actually suggesting that there's explicit racism and exclusion, as well as the wider challenges of a chemical science culture that is often competitive, hierarchical, and inflexible. And that's something I think that we really need to reflect upon. We move on to the fourth one, which is to do with the funding systems and structural barriers. And of course, funding is a very important aspect of one's ability to progress, particularly within academia. And also speaks to the way we sort of identify success. So this includes a lack of equal access to research experience at earlier stages, and latterly unequal access to funding, as well as I've already said, narrow definitions of what we see as success that actually penalize those who perhaps take a less traditional path. The fifth theme is speaks to global community. Of course, this is looking beyond just the UK, and this actually speaks to the need for increased diversity of thought and innovation by strengthening collaboration and recognition of talent, especially in the global South, so as to ensure a flourishing chemical science discipline. And this is really about, if I may add, when we think about the chemical sciences, do we just think about the global North, or do we actually think about the global North along with the global South and see the contributions that come from those in the global South? And finally, leadership in the community, accountability, and allyship. This includes the need for stronger and faster institutional and sector-wide leadership and accountability, as well as for all individuals, particularly those who are white and more senior, to act as allies, not just to those who are Black or from ethnic minorities, but those who actually need those allies to be able to progress. But of course, we see that there's probably a deficit there in terms of supporting those who identify as Black. So those 6 key interacting themes are really key for us, and I think they are ones that I would like us to take note of. And so we've had the quantitative evidence, but the qualitative evidence of chemical scientists' lived experiences paints a very stark picture of how pervasive racial and ethnic inequalities are within the chemical sciences. So here are 5 voices from our community to give an insight into the reality for Black and minoritized ethnic colleagues.
I came here to study from Zimbabwe, and to be fair, I did not really think I would see a lot of Black students anyway, but I think reality struck me when I saw that I was only one of the 3 Black students in the whole of my department. And this is a department of over 400 students in total. If you don't get to see people like you in positions higher up or in senior positions, I mean, it's very easy not to feel like you belong. It's heartbreaking. I think besides being lonely, it is a heartbreaking scenario to watch, because a lot of people do want to become professors or do want to be part of, the senior lecturers team, but they simply cannot do that.
As an academic, the support, hasn't been there as it was as a student. I would say it's been quite difficult to access opportunities to progress in my career. I think the lack of network to the corridors of influence and power may be a part of it. But yeah, it's been a big contrast from being a student to being an academic.
I guess the experiences that kind of resonate to me when I sort of became into an academic position and kind of into my senior academic positions was sort of attending conferences, certainly conferences for my discipline, and being quite considered as probably the IT person and never considered someone who would be on the platform to present. So I was often given by other speakers their USB keys to upload their presentations, and I'll be like, well, no, actually, I'm one of the speakers here. So at that point, it sort of makes you reflect on, why do they see me differently? Why am I being not considered in the same context as the other people who are on this platform to present? and sort of brings you that sort of self-doubt about, you know, what's your belonging in this sphere, and are you valued, I guess, in terms of your work and your representation.
I think any sort of career that you go into, you've got to enjoy and you've got to love doing what you do. Yeah. But at the same extent, it's nice to see like someone like that you can relate to being there. So I think as well, like I try as much as possible to be someone that, you know, young Black chemists can relate to, and like I will be there as a reference, I will be there to give guidance. You can't forever sustainably you know, be someone else, you know, and I think that's probably what I've always tried to do as much as possible, is just to be myself.
Within the workplace, as a Black woman, my behaviour and performance often becomes under an intense microscope, where simple expression of disagreement or criticism may be considered constructive feedback from others, yet viewed as raw anger or unbridled hostility coming from a Black woman. It's completely unnecessary and only makes the workplace more difficult. So having been part of this research and actions that taken forward, absolutely, yes, the dial is turning. But being honest and frank about it, it's a notch. It's not a situation where we've gone from 12 to 12:15. It's a notch in terms of moving forward. And it's really pleasing that the Royal Society has taken on this mantle, and it's absolutely brilliant to work with them forward. Having someone actively reach out to me as an individual in terms of understanding what my experience is, it's great. As a chemist myself, it's just pleasing to my heart to see the society that I'm a member of really take on this challenge and move forward and really drive that conversation forward. It's great to see.
So, watching and listening to those colleagues, it's absolutely essential that we create an inclusive and diverse culture for our community. So what do we do? How do we start? So I now hand back to Helen to share the RSC commitments and action plan.
Thank you so much, Robert, and a very big thank you to everybody who shared their experiences on those videos. Do you know, it's sometimes very difficult for people to share their own experiences, so we're very grateful to have had that insight. And in fact, in preparing for today's event and actually reading through the report itself, I had the opportunity to read the full testimonials, and I'd encourage everybody to do the same. They are available on the RSC website. It did have an impact on me when I heard people telling it to us in their own stories, their own words. And I think many people will kind of recognize some of those experiences. So we're open to hearing many more of anybody else who wants to share directly with us. And I think this underlines even more clearly why we're here today and why we're so committed to making real lasting change, so future generations of talented chemical scientists no longer have to face these challenges and lose their sense of belonging. So where do we go from here? And this is the really important part. We've done the report, we've looked at the evidence, we've looked at the data, and obviously you've heard from Robert kind of highlights from that. But now we have to focus on an action plan, because we can make commitments, we can promise to change, but we have to have an action plan to actually move forward. So our action plan that you'll see in front of you will cover 5 key areas. So there's 5 steps which will help to dismantle the barriers for people from Black and minoritized ethnic backgrounds in the chemical sciences. So I will cover the first point, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleagues on the panel to talk through the finer detail of the rest of the points. So first of all, our first commitment and action that we will take is to create a dedicated race and ethnicity unit. And this is a major action, and planning for this is already underway because the RSC, our leadership team and our trustees are committed to drive change. So our dedicated race and ethnicity unit will have funding of £1.5 million over 3 years in order to provide a long-lasting change in the global chemistry ecosystem. Now, this aims to include, and the aim will include cover, convening partners, education, industry, charity and government sectors, in addition to publishers and research funders. And those conversations and the work on that has already begun. Also, to continue collecting, analysing and publishing new data and evidence from the lived experiences and progressing this area of activity. Also, to deliver large projects, which will include research and also follow-up actions, and also, most importantly, the funding. So providing new grants for UK chemistry departments to improve the representation and progression of chemical scientists from minoritised ethnic backgrounds. And on the funding, the Royal Society of Chemistry will also be continuing to encourage and financially support community-driven projects through our existing Inclusion and Diversity Fund, including ring-fenced funding. And of course, this is also important. So our commitment to set up the unit will work, as I say, across partners within the community. And on that point, I'm going to hand over to Ijeoma, who's going to talk us through the next step. So step 2 in our action plan, which is actually partnering with the chemical industry employers.
Thank you very much, Helen. I mean, this is really an exciting day. So we've heard from Robert about the deficits in the chemical sciences and how if you're a Black chemist, you're unlikely to progress to become a Black chemist professor. And we also know that when it comes to employment, we don't see many Black chemists working in the chemical sciences. And what the RSC is doing today is actually acting on that data. And that's very, very important. What we know for sure is that when you have a diversity of opinions and you have a diversity of perspectives, you actually have better organizational outputs. And we can measure this any which way we want. We can look at profitability of private companies. It's about knowing your customers. We can look at citations from work that is collaborative and across multiple ethnicities. Again, it's about answering broader questions. And we can even look at the way the assets that underpin our pensions are priced. They're better priced if they're priced by people who are from diverse ethnic backgrounds. So what's the Royal Society doing about these deficits? What we're introducing today is the Broadening Horizons in Chemical Sciences programme. It's a really exciting program. What the RSC did was get together with Unilever and have a series of very high-level discussions on how the demographics could change in the chemical sciences. And there is no quick fix, but the RSC has come up with a plan which is going to be funded by the RSC and the chemical sciences companies. It's really exciting because my company, Nanomerics, is part of this program, along with companies like BASF, Bayer, GSK, Johnson Matthey, Oxford Nanopore, RSSL, Scott Bader, Syngenta, and Unilever. And what will happen is that there'll be 3 broad events. The first event is a taster event where students will be invited to get to know those working in the chemical sciences and to just understand from their experiences what a fantastic job it is to work in the chemical sciences and to work to change people's lives through chemistry. It's the best thing that you can possibly do if you are a chemist, apart from, of course, being an academic. Sorry, Robert. But that's what they're going to be envisaging when they come to this taster event. And then we're going to have daily visits to companies. And these daily visits are, you've now met the people, now come into the environment and see what a stimulating environment it's going to be. And lastly, very importantly, what will happen is that students that are really, really keen on just trying to find out whether this is something for them will be able to go for paid work experience placements in these companies. There'll be absolutely no cost to the students. And this will be a highly competitive program so that really when you exit from this program, you have a lot of pride in being selected to be part of this program. But also we want to open students' eyes to the opportunities, but more importantly, educate the companies about what it means to make sure you have a diverse and inclusive environment. Lots of people say we want to broaden inclusion, we want a diverse organization, but very, very few act on that. And so I'm really, really pleased to be part of what the Royal Society of Chemistry is doing. And not only will this program roll out, it's a 3-year program, but also there'll be monitoring so that we will learn from our mistakes, we will learn what works, and we will learn what doesn't work. But what we hope is that at the end of it, we leave a lasting impression on those companies about what it means to have a diverse workforce, even if it's in just a small and targeted way. So I'm really pleased to be part of this program. You can probably tell.
Thank you so much, Ijeoma. And I think your passion for it just shows how much we can make a difference and we can enable change. And can I just say, that chemistry is a fantastic discipline and also a fantastic career, and it must be welcoming for all, and that's really the journey that we are on now. So our third point in our action plan is to launch a 5-year RSC Windsor Fellowship, a mentoring scheme for chemistry students. And I'm delighted now to call on Kevin to take you through this part of our plan. So it's a 5-year mentoring scheme for chemistry students in partnership with the Windsor Fellowship. And this is the fantastic scheme which I mentioned earlier, which is called Destination STEM, Chemical Sciences, which was launched yesterday or started yesterday. And this is the programme that we fund through the Chemist Community Fund, which has been helping chemists and their families for over a century now. So I'm going to hand over to Kevin to take us through our point 3 on our plan.
Thank you, Helen. I'm very excited to be here today. As the chair of a national race equality charity, the Windsor Fellowship is a product of the riots that took place in 1981. And at that time, our society was experiencing many challenges: racial, socioeconomic, cultural. What was our place in the world? 41 years on, today's report, Missing Element, highlights the fact that there's still so much work for us to do. And Destination STEM is part of that response. And it's a medium-term to long-term sustained focus response to actually support the pipeline and secure the pipeline for tomorrow's chemical scientists and chemistry students. So the Windsor Fellowship came about as a result of the riots, but the riots were a nadir in our society's journey. But by bringing communities together, by bringing organizations like the Royal Society of Chemistry, we've actually been able since 1986 to work with 19,000 people to improve educational attainment, promote active citizenship and belonging, and support the transition into career-focused employment. So our work, though, is only possible when organizations take a look at the data, and then decide that there's opportunities for action. And today's decision is part of and today's program in launch of the Destination STEM program is part of that opportunity to think about how we respond through positive action and how we use the legislation and the choices that we have to make a difference. So over the course of the next 5 years, in partnership with the Royal Society of Chemistry, the Windsor Fellowship will be running several cohorts of Destination STEM programs with the ambition to harness the chemical sciences talent that the Royal Society of Chemistry has and provide that bridge for tomorrow's chemical scientists to see the potential that they may have for both their studies and careers in this area. So we will be working with students from across the United Kingdom and the Irish Republic who are studying chemistry to provide and offer life skills, develop their awareness of what the breadth of careers offers in the chemical sciences, and combined with the other initiatives that the RSC is supporting and that the partners of the RSC are resourcing, see that this area has a destination for them. And the program is really tapping into existing resources. As much as there's a financial need, it's harnessing the very brains that make our area so very important for how it can change lives. So the program links squarely into the report's 2 key interacting themes. The first is attraction, inspiration, and progression. And the second is mentorship, sponsorship, and networks. By harnessing both sides of that through our mentors who are donating and giving up their time to support the development of our mentees, we hope to be able to transform the profile of the chemical sciences communities so that 1, they'll understand what the options are, 2, they'll understand the different careers that exist both in terms of their studies. And we also want our students to aim for the most research intensive universities so that they have the benefit of getting and experiencing the most positive and highest quality research experience that leads the pathway towards higher degrees and greater success in the future so that tomorrow's chemical science community looks like our community today.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I happened to be at the launch yesterday, as I said, and the mentees that I met really did inspire me to take action. It was phenomenal to see the energy in the room, but also to hear from those who support the mentees as well. And I think that's a very important programme of work. So as we take you on to the 4th and 5th action point on our action plan, I'm going to ask Marina to take us through these 2 points. The first is looking how to increase representation in our governance, committees and editorial boards. And the second is focus on engagement with our community and partners to listen, share and learn from the lived experiences that are challenging us all around us. So I'm going to hand over to Marina.
Thank you very much, Helen. As others have said, it's great to be here today at the launch of this great report. And I want to talk a little bit about the 4th and the 5th commitments that we are presenting. So first of all, we want to proactively increase representation in our governance, in committees and editorial boards. This is very important. We remain absolutely committed to proactively increase this representation from Black and minoritized ethnic backgrounds in our governance boards, in our committees, and across our whole organization as we make progress towards our goal of reflecting the ethnic diversity in the UK. We will continue to monitor and report our diversity data, which is currently being published every 2 years, alongside other diversity data, including the ones from our publishing editorial boards. The 5th and last point is to engage with our community and partners to listen to, share, learn from lived experiences and continually challenge ourselves to do more. As we've heard just earlier with the videos, those are very important experiences and we are listening to everyone who wants to speak to us. We recognize the above 4 commitments will begin to address some of the inequalities that have been highlighted in our research and in the report, but this will not alone solve the scale and the complexity of the issues in their entirety. In seeking to achieve a truly global chemistry community, we will continue to empower, convene, raise the voices of the underrepresented. We'll be working hand in hand with partners, as you've just heard, to address racism and racial and ethnic inequalities wherever they exist in the chemical sciences. So, Helen.
Thank you very much, Marina. I just want to echo a point that Marina mentioned, and that was increasing representation across the whole organisation of the Royal Society of Chemistry. And I think that's a really key part of our commitment and action plan. So thank you very much to Ijeoma, to Kevin, Marina for helping me set out our 5-step plan. Please do go back to the report to find further details of those 5 steps and those actions that we are committing to taking. And we are absolutely committed to these actions, and this is by no means the end of our work. We'll continue using data and evidence to guide our actions, to address inequalities and to hold ourselves to account for making a difference. Now, as we heard earlier from Robert, one of the key themes from our report is our global community. And we now have 2 recorded contributions focusing on the opportunities here and the work that we've already been doing with partners in the global research ecosystem. So we're going to hear first of all from our president, Professor Tom Welton, and then from the CEO of Elsevier, Kumsal Bayasit, and we'll be sharing the video now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Welton, President of the Royal Society of Chemistry. And I'm sorry that I can't be at the panel in person today. This is an important piece of research. It's a milestone, and there are many actions that we will put in place now that we see the scale of the issue. I will look forward to both aiding the process and keeping up to date on progress. What I wanted to add is the importance and responsibility of the RSC and the role that we can play to make the global chemistry community a truly global chemistry community. By that, I mean that it is truly representative and that all voices are heard. Because global can tend to mean global north and can be dominated by those voices. And this means not just that we are missing an opportunity to have more diversity of thought from chemists all over the world, but also to celebrate the breadth and excellence of science and role models globally, and to make an impact on Black and minority ethnic chemists who are underrepresented here in the UK, but not globally. We heard this message loud and clear through the research in the Missing Elements report. So we need to hear more from and collaborate more with the Global South, Africa, Caribbean nations, South America, and others, and put in place processes to make this happen. As an international society, we have connections with members all over the world. So tapping into the talent is really key to meeting this ambition and to make an impact. I am really eager to make a difference, and I know that working collaboratively, we can make that happen. Thank you.
Last fall, we joined forces with the Royal Society of Chemistry to bring together two groups in our research community, publishers and funders. Our goal was to focus on race and ethnicity and take active steps together. Before I share our findings, I want to commend the Royal Society of Chemistry for the leadership they have shown with the Joint Committee for Action on Inclusion and Diversity in Publishing. Working with nearly 50 publishers, they have created a collaborative space for non-competitive knowledge exchange around inclusion and diversity. This is the only way to create a more inclusive publishing system by adopting a common approach and creating greater transparency as a sector. Both publishers and funders play a central role in fostering and disseminating research and are dependent on the scientific community for peer review. There are also clear differences. Publishers are global and focus on scientific disciplines. Funders are nationally and regionally oriented for the most part. I see three key takeaways. First, as we all know, representation matters. We need to grow our diversity as organizations, empower our teams to drive change, and ensure that we represent the scientific communities we serve. Staff exchanges, sharing best practices, and celebrating underrepresented role models are a few examples. At Elsevier, we established the SAL Rising Black Scientist Awards, as well as HBCU internships and reverse mentoring programs for senior executives. We also learned the importance of not putting the burden of change solely on the shoulders of the underrepresented. Second, minimize bias and increase diversity in peer review. Racial and ethnic groups are underrepresented in grants and as authors, editors, and reviewers. We need to find ways to ensure greater diversity in reviewers and share our data. At Elsevier, we've had a lot of help from our Inclusion and Diversity External Advisory Board, which includes Tom Welton, by taking a systems approach to balancing our editorial boards, conference speakers, and providing sex and gender guidelines for authors. I invite you to read more in our new IND Advisory Board report, which will be out next week. And finally, there are also areas where collaboration needs more discussion. A key joint commitments priority is to develop a widely adopted race and ethnicity framework to establish baselines. It's been great to share Elsevier's work to develop gender and race and ethnicity schemas to this collective knowledge base. But given funders' alignment to national and regional frameworks, collaborating sometimes may be more complex than we realized, and this is an important insight. Whether funders or publishers, we are all responsible for developing inclusive organizations. But no single organization can solve the complex issues of underrepresentation around race and ethnicity. We will continue to collaborate within and across our sectors to remove systemic barriers. This is the only way that we can make long-lasting change in our research ecosystem.
Thank you so much to Tom and Kumsal for making those video contributions. Now, as Marina outlined in the action plan, engaging with partners is such an important aspect of addressing the racial and ethnic inequalities in the chemical sciences. so are allies. So we need everyone to talk about and to address racism, discrimination, and inequality in the community so that together we can make progress towards becoming a truly inclusive and welcoming community. So we're now going to share some recorded contributions focusing on the importance of partners and allies. And we'll hear from Professor Steve Howdell from the University of Nottingham and Chair of Heads of Chemistry UK, Dr. Alison Wall, who is the UKRI Deputy Director and Chair of the Research Careers Network and EDI Implementation Group, Dr. Steve Smith, Head of Chemical Technologies and Operations at Syngenta, and the Right Honourable Greg Clark MP, who is Chair of the House of Commons Science and Technology Committee.
The fact that at Nottingham, we've recently done the Race Equality Charter, and we've got a bronze award, and there's lots of things in there that the university is committed to doing. And one of them is reverse mentoring. I've put myself forward for that. I'm really quite excited about it. It's going to be a challenge, but I'm going to be assigned a mentor, definitely a Black or minority ethnic student, who's going to mentor me in what it's like to be a student at the University of Nottingham when you come from a minority. And that is, of course, something I know nothing about. So I'm quite interested in that process to find out what that's going to be like. Yes, it's a great thing to do. But also it will be a little bit uncomfortable for me. I mean, I am, you know, I'm a middle-aged white professor, so I've come through a very different system, and I haven't had to face some of the issues that I know some of these students have. So I think this is my way of saying, well, you know, I'll put myself on the spot. Let me learn from what you've been experiencing, and let me see in my position as a head of school of chemistry whether I can make a difference. Are there things that I can use then to actually help others in your position? We've got this system in place. I haven't actually been assigned my mentor yet, that I will be told in the next few weeks who I've got, and I'm quite excited by it. It won't be a chemist, it'll be somebody from outside of my school, which makes a lot of sense, but it will be somebody in the science faculty and somebody that I could learn from. We have to make changes. More and more dusty reports on shelves isn't going to help anybody. So there's a couple of things that are quite high on my agenda with this initiative. So one is that in Nottingham, we're told by the local community that our university is seen as an island on the hill. It's a Russell Group university. It's seen as a bit elitist, and so we don't generally recruit as well as we possibly could from inner city environments, and that's something I'd very much like to change. And the other thing is just about careers and appointments. So we've recently learned quite a lot about recruiting in different ways. So in the School of Chemistry, we recruited 3 new lecturers, and we did this in a completely blind and anonymous fashion by just recruiting based on 1 page of science from all the applicants that came in. So we didn't know age, race, gender, or from which university they were coming. And it's a very different way of doing that recruitment that I found very refreshing. And I know also at our university, with one of our CDTs, the CDT in Sustainable Chemistry, applies those same kinds of metrics to anonymous recruiting of its PhD students. Now, maybe those are things that will help us in the future to overcome some of the biases that have affected us in the past. We have to make some changes, and you know, I'd like to think that as somebody who at the moment is in a position where I can influence. I'm a head of the School of Chemistry. I input every day into our science faculty. I want to be able to try and push and make those changes. So not just for the next few months, but actually to set things in motion for the coming few years and make sure that we really change the pipeline, because that's what's got to change. This is a long-term problem. I hope that we've got measures that will make a difference, but we won't see them immediately. I'm sure of that.
At our Jellis Hill Centre, we have over 900 people working on technologies towards sustainable agriculture. The challenges our customers are facing are immense and increasing all the time, and we must innovate and collaborate to deliver new and sustainable products. Diversity of backgrounds and thinking are key to that innovation. Syngenta has a strong inclusivity ethos and a very active DE&I team, but we do recognise there's more to do to ensure our workforce better reflects the diversity of the UK population and of our customers. Most of us are scientists, and we also recognise the significant challenge in the chemical sciences to retain students of Black and minoritised ethnic backgrounds in the career pipeline. This was brought home to us in a very thought-provoking Syngenta seminar from Professor Robert Mokaya last year. We can only do so much on our own though, but by joining forces with like-minded organisations, we can create a really powerful force for change. We are really pleased to be involved with a number of other companies in providing support for the programme for students from Black and minoritised ethnic backgrounds. Most importantly, our colleagues will be involved as speakers, role models, mentors, and allies. And we hope that Syngenta and the other companies in this partnership with the RSC will be corporate allies for the participants and enable us to make significant progress towards addressing the racial imbalance that is all too clear in the chemical sciences.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be talking about our work on race ethnicity in UK research and innovation and in the Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council. First of all, I'd really like to welcome this new report and the commitment to action from the Royal Society of Chemistry. We think it's really important both to understand the issues at the whole research and innovation system level and the detailed discipline level, and look forward to continuing our partnership work with the Royal Society of Chemistry going forward. UK Research and Innovation has just published its first draft EDI action plan, which is available now on our engagement hub for all of your inputs. And we'll be focusing, as always, continuing to improve fairness and trust in our peer review processes, using positive action to improve participation in our peer review college and our advisory groups, and providing more connections and opportunities for people to feel included across the research landscape. We'll be drawing on the findings from our Inclusion Matters projects, which looked at EDI issues and interventions to find out what works. And we'll be publishing very shortly our EDI expectations, which many of you on this call I know will be EDI experts, but our EDI expectations are really aimed at people who aren't EDI experts, but would like to easily find some resources to guide what they can do in their everyday work to help bring about greater diversity and inclusion. And we're really hoping that we can be, alongside the Royal Society of Chemistry, help lead significant change to improve diversity and inclusion in our research landscape.
My name is Greg Clark, and I chair the Science and Technology Select Committee in the House of Commons. It's particularly appropriate that in British Science Week, we should be looking at the people who make up the cadre of talent that we have in British science. And what we know is that it's not diverse enough. My committee is engaged in an inquiry into what are the causes and what are the solutions to the lack of inclusion for people from Black and ethnic minority backgrounds, women, and people from more disadvantaged socioeconomic backgrounds across the whole range of STEM careers in academia and in industry. So the work that the Royal Society of Chemistry has done to inform this very important inquiry and investigation, I particularly welcome. Befitting a learned society of scientists, it is rigorous, it is based on evidence, including the personal testimony of many people who've experienced and in some cases overcome barriers. This is one of the most important inquiries, not just that my committee, but that any select committee is doing during this Parliament. And I'm really pleased to have the calibre of evidence from the Royal Society of Chemistry. And I look forward to reporting back with some recommendations that are designed to make not an incremental change, but a lasting change to make sure that not just chemistry, but all of our scientific disciplines benefit from the full wealth of talent that's available in this country.
Thank you so much to both Steve Howdell and to Steve Smith, and also to Alison and Greg for those valuable points and contributions. And we are going to look forward to continuing our work with all of the contributors today, as well as many others. So we're coming to the final part of our launch event, but before we do the final parts, we're going to hear from Jill Reid, who's joining us virtually. As I introduced earlier, Jill Reid is our President-elect and joins us from Southampton University. So Jill, we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks very much indeed, Helen, and thank you for the opportunity to join remotely today for the launch of this really important report. I think one of the things I'm most proud about in being part of the Royal Society of Chemistry is the commitment to evidence-based research to drive change. And that's been evident in a number of the discussions we've heard this afternoon. But this report that's being launched today is a really crucial one. If we want the sciences, and particularly chemistry, to be a leading contributor to solving the societal challenges ahead of us, we must draw on the best talent from across all backgrounds and all of the people that are in the pipeline. And so that's a really key part. I've really enjoyed listening to the action plan. And I think I think putting these in place to actually take forward, to move forward from the report to positive outcomes that benefits the people and the science are really crucial. I also was fortunate to join the launch of the RSC Windsor Fellowship Mentoring Scheme last night. And I think, as somebody that really, I really care about the future of the chemical sciences and the talent that's coming through, and supporting young Black, Asian and minoritized ethnic groups to A-level students to come through and be supported and mentored and help them to develop and forge their careers in chemistry is a fantastic objective. And of course, feeding that through into the Broadening Horizons program within the industrial side with our partners there is really key. But I also think that allyship is a key element if we're going to take this report forward and work towards a more positive future. Each one of us has a role to play in supporting and advocating for those that are underrepresented. And we hear that very clearly in the lived experiences. We've heard today from some of the in some of the videos, but also in the report itself. And to quote Sandil Utetwa, the chemical science community is so network driven. You have to know someone to get on. Someone senior has to support you, to help you get a position, to get a grant. And I think we can all resonate with that. I think we can all see, if we reflect on our own circumstances, allies are important, mentors are important. And I think what I really want to do today is to encourage every one of us to step up to this challenge. We need a community of advocates. Each of one of us must play our part to drive the changes that are essential. So let's use our visibility and voices to raise awareness and start conversations about racism and exclusion. All of us, irrespective of our own race and ethnicity, can play a huge role here. And this will help to create a much more welcoming and inclusive culture. We saw this with the RSC's work on gender inequality, where men have played a crucial role in helping move the dial and create a more inclusive environment for women. And we now must do the same for racism, and to ensure that white people play their part here in contributing to the conversation and driving that change. Creating a more inclusive community in chemistry and in science more broadly is really essential if we're going to be able to attract and retain the best talent. And we don't need much more than that to motivate us to make sure that we take this challenge seriously and drive forward. So I really look forward to working with the RSC and with our community and with our partners outside to really make a difference here. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Jill, and thank you so much for joining us remotely this afternoon. So I'm now going to come back to our panel and our previous speakers and just ask each of them for just one final thought that they would like to share. So I'm going to go first to Marina.
Thank you, Helen. So in our inclusion and diversity strategy, we set our objective to increase the diversity of people entering chemical sciences and to ensure they progress and fulfill their potential. As chair of the RSC Inclusion and Diversity Committee, I'm very proud to have taken part to this research that highlights the pervasive racial and ethnic inequalities present in our community. As Jill said, as scientists, we collect and analyze data to ensure an evidence-driven approach. We did this, as Helen mentioned, with our Breaking the Barrier report, addressing the gender imbalance in chemistry. It formed the basis for very important commitments and actions, not just by us, but by others as well. This report presents data and important evidence of the challenges and systemic barriers, both in academia and industry, faced by chemists as a result of racial and ethnic inequalities. We hope that this report will provide the starting point for many to join us with new initiatives and actions to accelerate change. We're proud to lead the way with our commitments that we discussed and described just earlier. I want to highlight one in particular, which is the creation of the dedicated race and ethnicity unit that will lead systemic change. As a former head of chemistry department, I wish to highlight one of the objectives of this unit, which is to provide new grants to UK chemistry departments, working closely with heads of chemistry UK to facilitate changes to improve the representation of chemists from minoritized ethnic backgrounds. I believe that creating an inclusive and diverse culture is essential for our community. It will influence chemists' careers, it will lead to better science, and ultimately a sustainable and successful society. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you so much, Marina. I'm now going to ask Robert for his final thoughts.
Thank you, Helen. So for my final thoughts, I would like to address each one of you individually. So I'm not speaking to the chemical sciences, I'm speaking to you as an individual. So we've had the report, we know what it says. But I'd like to suggest to you that systems and processes do not exist in the absence of people's values and cultural tendencies. So my appeal to each one of us is for us to see how we can contribute to being part of the solution and not the problem, to be willing to challenge our own biases and prejudices that we may have, so that we are able to reclaim the missing elements. Chemistry has to do better. We have to do better. We have to create that enabling environment. Now, I'm a chemist, so I think as a chemist. Can you imagine what chemistry would be like without lithium or sodium or calcium? That's really what we have, but we are not accepting that that's what it is. We absolutely need to reclaim the missing elements. We need to bring them back. And I hope that we will all be part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robert. And that's quite a powerful thought about reclaiming the missing elements. So thank you for sharing that. I'm just going to come to Kevin for his thoughts.
I think it's critical that we look at the data, we understand the scale and the nature of the challenges, but then explore how those challenges are different depending on who and what our profile is. I want to remind colleagues that we've looked at race, but race is only one identity that we all bring. The intersectional impact of racism, gender inequality, socioeconomic exclusion, combine to actually exacerbate those inequalities in such a way that actually the scale of the interventions that's required to actually achieve an equitable outcome are immense. And my colleagues have highlighted the role that everyone as a collective has to play, but understanding the individual experiences and our individual capacity to deliver that change is critical. Leadership starts from within. Understanding your colleagues' experiences, how those intersect by gender, by race, by class, by experience of language, by being an international colleague or a staff member or a student, makes a difference to how we respond and what the appropriate response is. So I encourage colleagues to go away, look at this report. It's a very good report. And as it says, it's not stating things which are new, but it's restating what is. And let's not have this conversation in 41 years so that we can actually think we've got different problems to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. And finally, I'm going to come to Ijeoma.
Thanks very much, Helen. I mean, it's been an absolute privilege to be part of this work. And I've got just 3 things to say. The first thing I want everybody to remember is that we are talking about the quality of the science we do and the quality of the science, not only in universities, but also in companies. The quality will be improved if we have diverse thoughts going into that particular endeavor. There is lots of data that supports this particular notion. The other thing I'd like to say is that when I was a young child growing up in the 60s and 70s, my dream was to work in Marks and Spencer. Of course, other department stores are available. But when I went to Nigeria and saw people who looked like me in positions of authority, I realized I could do different things. I could have alternative careers. I'm really happy that the Royal Society of Chemistry has decided to act. I hope more organizations will stop talking about equality, diversity, inclusion, and actually act. And the reason I want this to happen is I want my granddaughter not to have to go abroad to then realize that she can have alternative careers. I want her to look around the UK and feel, I can do that because I can see someone who looks like me doing it. And so it can happen for me just as it's happening for them. I never believed I would be a professor in a UK university, but it's happened. And I don't want other people coming behind me to not believe because they can't see anyone that looks like them.
Thank you so much for sharing. And again, thank you very much to the panel. I think your thoughts and input are so important. And just to echo a couple of points made there, there is plenty of evidence that diversity leads to better science, better decisions, and better outcomes, and we must never forget that. Now, before we finish, I'm just going to share a couple of thoughts of my own, because this followed on from the work that we've certainly been doing over the last few months, but also from the report that we launched on the BBC's coverage of the campaign yesterday. And just to say that there have been a number of indisputably racist social media posts, including one to Paula Ghosh, the BBC science editor, as well as messages to RSC staff. But this only reinforces that while we are taking action to make a step change in the chemical sciences, there are issues of racism and racial discrimination in wider society, which are deep-rooted, and we all need to work together to ensure that we address that once and for all. And that really is a rallying cry to all of us in the chemical science community to work together to address this. So if you have not done so already, I'd urge you again to read the full Missing Elements report. It does extend beyond what you've heard today and the discussions that we have, and presents the undeniable evidence of inequality faced by our colleagues from Black and minoritized ethnicity backgrounds. And we truly are committed to achieving a truly global chemistry community, and we will continue to empower, convene, and raise the voices of underrepresented, working hand in hand with partners to address racism and racial and ethnic inequalities wherever they exist in the chemical sciences. As I mentioned earlier, chemistry is a truly phenomenal discipline, subject, science. It's really important for everybody. It offers amazing careers with great opportunities, but we must make sure that it's welcoming to everyone, to all, and that we create those equal opportunities. So I'll finish by just saying we must find solutions and we must fund solutions, and this is very important. So thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you for all of your contributions, to everybody who's been part of this work. Thank you so much to the team at the Royal Society of Chemistry who've worked so hard, along with our Inclusion and Diversity Committee. It truly is a joined up effort, and I know that we are going to take action and we are going to make a difference, and we will make the world a better place. So thank you very much.